Why did Peter follow Jesus? Did he know who he was following? Did he just think Jesus was some rabbi? How did Peter get to know him? How did Peter get to know that Jesus claimed to be God himself? Well, I think it started by Peter inviting Jesus to his house. Because for Peter, he had to learn who Jesus really was. Today, we're going to continue in Luke 4 as we talk about why it's important for us to know Jesus. We're going to make it through one verse today, but it has lots and lots of lessons. Hope you enjoy this. Okay, what else? I had a baby. I did have a baby. Thankfully, I didn't have a baby. Grandbaby went Friday night. Woohoo! This is how you have grandbabies. She calls they call it about 5 o'clock. Mom, Hannah's going into labor. And I'm like, okay. They go have Cheyenne come over and watch the baby or watch her other baby until they go have the baby until 8 when the babysitter gets there. And then I said, okay, well, Dusty's got basketball till 9. I'll pick him up at 9:30. The baby's being born in Scottsdale, so I figure, it's going to be a long night. So I got in my car at 9:30, 9:45, got all the way up to Scottsdale at almost 11. Right as I'm pulling up, Jesse calls and he's like, Mom, where are you? Like, she's dilated to 10. Doctor's going to be here. So I literally walked in. Hey, how's it going? Doctor walked in. She pushed like 4 times. Boop, out comes a grandbaby. I'm like, this could not be better. Home by 12:30. Okay, so it totally works for me. Okay, I'm like, that is one cute baby, and I'm glad it's your responsibility now. I'm going home and going to bed and waiting for Joyce to show up at my house, apparently. Anyway, so we have a new baby, so it's kind of cute. She's so cute. She's just little. They're just so cute. And then they grow up. Yes, okay. All right, let's talk Bible. Okay, last week, where were we? We're continuing on for Luke, if you're new here. And last week we were in Capernaum, and we always say if you don't know where that is, if you get a Holy Land book, look under Capernaum, you'll see exactly where it's at. It's right on the water at the Sea of Galilee, kind of the coolest place ever. I would like to live there. So today I want to talk about something that I actually learned that I never ever knew before. And I'm always pushing people to read their Bibles here, like read your Bible, read your Bible. And I think that's a really good thing. But I think sometimes we read just to get through it really fast and we don't spend the time to focus on what we're learning. So that's what I'm having so much fun studying Luke, because I'm learning things that I never even thought of before or I never saw. So that's what makes me kind of happy. So today is one of those days. Now we're going to go back to a verse that we went on last week. We're going to take 2 different directions. So it's Luke 4:38. Then he got up and left the synagogue. So Jesus, he was in the synagogue, and he was preaching that day and casting out demons. And he entered Simon's home. Simon is Peter. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever. They asked him to help her, and standing over her, he rebuked the fever, and it left her, and she immediately got up and waited on them. Okay, so what last week we went off, we did the casting demons and healing. And so this week, I want to go take that same verse and talk about something that I'd never seen before. Now, when I always heard that Jesus called his disciples, my view is this: Jesus is walking along, it's like, yo, come follow me. And they dropped everything and just came, followed him, okay? And I'm thinking, I wouldn't do that. I don't know. That'd be kind of creepy. Like, hey, follow me. I'm like, I don't know you, okay? So what I didn't realize is that isn't what happened at all. Like, this shows me ahead of time that before Peter followed Jesus, he was invited into his home. And I never even saw that. And I was kind of excited because it made me start thinking about something like, why would Peter ask Jesus to his home? Like, here is this new preacher coming on the scene, and what would make him go? Like, I wouldn't just go to Joyce Meyer and say, hi, would you come to my house? She'd be like, no, you're so crazy. So I don't know, but somewhere along the line, Peter said, hey, come to my house. I can't imagine Jesus asking. But I think in a sense, Peter's seeing him, and then he's kind of curious, like, who is this guy? I need to get to know him. Because before you and I can follow him, we have to know him. And that's a really big point that I want to make today. When our kids, when they are dating people, when they were dating, we have 5 of them married, and what we do is we have a cabin up north, and we call it the cabin test. And the girls don't know this, but when the boys are dating, I'm like, hey, bring your girlfriend up, and this is the cabin test. And because when you're hanging out with somebody for 2, 3, 4 days, you really can get to know what they're like. It's not like Peter's seeing Jesus up there, but he wants to bring him to his home and see what are the things is he really for real? Is he nice to people? Does he help people? For the girls, it's kind of like our big thing is we have to make sure that they get along with all the other girls. So if we had one girl one time that actually talked bad about one of the other sisters, and we told our son, done. Get rid of her. It's not going to work. Like, we're just not even doing that. Like, we're going to have harmony in this family one way or the other, and we're not bringing anyone in here that isn't. So, but we do a cabin test because we need to see, are they grumpy in the morning? Are they mad because, like, they want to watch Teen Mom or something, and we want to watch the football game or whatever? Like, we need to see what they're like. And so, in a sense, I'm thinking that this is what Peter's doing. He's saying, hey, Jesus, come to my house, and let's see what you're really, really like. Now, what dawned on me is that we have to make a decision to follow Christ because of who he says he is. And that's what Peter is going to try to figure out. Who is Jesus, really? Like, if I think that Jesus is just a good teacher, I started thinking that so was my history teacher, Mr. Levy, in high school, okay? He's more than just a good teacher. If I think he's just compassionate, well, so was Mother Teresa. If I think that he just is there to give me what I want, like, oh, Jesus, give me bread and heal me or whatever, I say Santa Claus can do that. I mean, that's kind of, if we think that he's a good moral man, I can give you a list of my Mormon cousins who are probably the most moral people that I know, like no rated R movies, they don't cuss, they don't drink, they don't smoke. Okay, so if you want morality, but Jesus is saying, I am much more than just those things. If we think that he's just someone who is a hero and he lays down his life for people, then we just go to Washington, D.C. and we see, I can't remember the name of the with all the white tombs, Arlington, there you go. You were just there, weren't you? There you go. Okay, Arlington. I mean, row after row after row of people who died for their country, and so he has to be more than just a hero. I was reading in India. They have large sections that are very secular, and what they do in India is that they put posters of people on their walls. I guess they don't have like paintings or anything, so they put posters, and some of them have posters of Jesus, and some of them have him with like this crown, Sacred Heart crown of thorns around him. But alongside of those, they have pictures of John F. Kennedy. Okay, go figure. Gandhi. They'll have pictures in their homes because they think that these are great heroes. And I'm thinking, why would they think John F. Kennedy is a hero? Because he was assassinated. And so anyone that's assassinated for their country or their cause, they're going to think as a local hero. And so what I say is that Jesus isn't just a hero. He has to be more than that. So we, like Peter, have to follow Jesus because he says he's not any of those things. He's all of those things plus. And he is God. And so when we get to that point of saying, okay, I'm not just following a man, I'm not following a myth, but I'm following God, what does that do to my life? Because it should change everything about us on the inside. Look at Isaiah 7:14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. And so you're like, well, that's cute. Emmanuel, Henry, John. I mean, it's just a name, whatever. But it's really more than a name. If you look at Matthew 1:23. Behold, the virgin shall be with child and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. So what changes everything for us is this idea that Jesus is God. It's not like he's just some guy. He's God. And that should be really important for us when we determine why we're going to follow him. John 1:1-3 says, in the beginning was the Word. Okay, and if you go down farther, we find out that the Word is Jesus, so we can just insert that. In the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God. Okay, so if there's any questions, if you have people coming to your door, knock, 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 saying Jesus is not God, you take them right to John 1 and say, yes, he is, because he says he is, not because me. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him. And apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. So, just like Peter, we have to determine who he is, because if in fact his claims are true, then he is the absolute only way to get to God. And that's really important for us to know, because a lot of people don't know that. They think that there's lots and lots of ways. By the time I got done listening to him, I thought, I'm really anxious to go to heaven. Like, I look at the news and I'll think, I'm sick of this world. I'm sick of this sadness, and I'm sick of, like when he would say, in heaven there's going to be no more abuse and no more neglect and no more of the things that we're used to around here. And I thought, I so long for that time. But then it dawned on me that if the claims of Jesus are true, the only way to get there is through him. And people don't like to hear that. It makes them very, very angry. So I want to just make sure that everyone here knows, and it may be shocking if you're new or if you just have never heard that before, that Jesus is not just a way to God. He is the way to God. It's the only way that you can get there to heaven to spend eternity. Now, the problem is that we live in this world that says it doesn't really matter what you believe as long as you're really sincere. And we have to fight that all the time because, like I said, I have a group of cousins that are Mormons. They could not be more sincere. But I know their beliefs, and I know they're not what Jesus says. The Jesus they believe in is not the Jesus of the Bible. So I have to discount that and say it's a way that they think, but it's the wrong way. It's only Jesus alone, and it infuriates people when we tell them that because it makes it sound like, we're making up the rules, but we're really not. We live in this world that says, I heard this somewhere, like a hubcap or a rim or a spoke. I can't think of the name of it. But it's in the middle of your tire, and then you have all these like cute little rim things that go out of it. And people think like this is God, and each one of these little spokes is a way to get to God. So you can be Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Christian Science, you just name it. But all roads lead to God. And what Jesus is saying here is that in John 14:6, he says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me. And that's really, we got to stand on that and click, because we're coming into a time in this world where that's going to get really convoluted, and people are going to say, that's not true and that's not fair. But I think the thing is that when Jesus comes and says that, it's the same thing. People are going to get very, very angry. I had a lady tell me one time, she told me, she said, my son is getting married to a girl who is, and he told me what religion she was from. It's not a Christian religion. And I said, well, that kind of scares me. And she said, oh, I would rather my son marry someone who believes in God than someone who doesn't, even if it's the wrong way. And I said, but the Bible says that Jesus is the only way to God. And she condescendingly said to me, ha, 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 little girl, you would discount 2/3 of the world's religion if you actually believe that. And I'm like, I do believe that, okay? But not because I say it, but the Bible says it. So we have to really, that's why it's important to know our Bible and to be able to stand up and say, I'm sorry you don't like that. I'm sorry you don't agree with me. But that's what Jesus said. Matthew 7:13, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter through it, for the gate is small, the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. See, that's a really tough verse. Few. Like, we just think everyone's a Christian because they say they believe in God. And I don't think that. I think when Jesus comes in your life, everything changes. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But anyway, back to Peter. Peter has to find out who Jesus is because of who he claims. Think about Peter for a second. He's a Jewish boy. He's a fisherman. He's watching, this whole scene with Jesus, and he's casting out demons and healing the sick. And he's confronted by, who in the world is this man? And the thing is that if Jesus is just a man, nice guy, maybe a few miraculous powers, moral guy, whatever, then you and I can just go on with our life. We can just go shopping, we can go to the bar tonight, we can go have an affair, we can do whatever we want to do because it doesn't really matter who Jesus is. But if Jesus is who he claims to be, which is God, and if he says, I want to come into your life, and when he does, he invades our life, and then everything changes from that. He changes us from the inside out. So if he is God, then I have to bow my knee to him and say, okay, God, my life is yours. Now, what would you like to do with my life so that I can serve you. Now, what I saw that I never saw before was that Peter really did not just start following him right away. He invited him into his house. He got to know him. I think Peter was saying, I need to see if your claims are really going to match up to your life. And the more time that Peter spent with Jesus, the more he grew to know him and grew to know who he was. So I always say that, and I know everyone's so sick of hearing this. I think every ministry has their kind of like thing, and our thing here is trying to get people to read their Bibles so that they can connect the dots between their life and faith. So those are our dots. For those of you that stress, there they are. So it's always a reminder of what we do here. It's like connecting the dots between our life and our faith. That's really important, but you can only do that by reading the Bible. When Rob was, when he first became a Christian, he went fishing one time. I was on the lake fly fishing, I think it was, and he just happened to tell this guy, I'm a Christian. And the guy said, really, have you ever read the Bible all the way through? And Rob hadn't. And he's like, no, embarrassing enough, I haven't. And he said, it made me realize that first I was embarrassed, but if I'm going to say I'm a Christian, I better know what I'm talking about because that's my job to know this God that I have invited into my life. So how we do that is we read our Bible and we get to know that. It's like our sales, like all of our kids, we run a dental design business and our kids are in sales. Now, if someone called up one day and said, hey, could you tell me a little bit about this product, and they have no idea what it means, they wouldn't be that good of salesmen. So not that we're salesmen for Jesus, but we kind of are. Like we need to know answers, and if we don't know the answers, we need to say, you know what? I don't know the answers. I just know Jesus came in my life. He's changed me, but I will find the answers for you, and then get back with them. So it's like you don't have to know everything except the fact that he's come in and changed our life. Now, the other thing that I thought about that makes me get to know Jesus even better is when I hear of how he changes people's lives. Like suddenly that's so important to me. So I was reading this article about Miles McPherson. He's the pastor of the Rock Church in San Diego. And he was coming out of his office one day and there's an elevator and he said out of the elevator came this guy and he's this huge guy, like 250 pounds, all tatted up, shorts, and he walks out and he looks like he's a linebacker for whatever. And the pastor McPherson said, what are you doing here? And the guy said, I'm really nervous. I'm here for my first ministry meeting. And he goes, he told the pastor, he said, you encourage us to do something. So I figured that I want to serve the Lord, and so I came up with what I need to do. And he said, since we have hundreds of ministries, I asked this man, this all tatted up man, he said, what ministry are you joining? And he said, the knitting ministry. Okay? And then he adds, he goes, well, I don't really knit, I crochet, okay? And he goes, here's this huge guy who looks like he could be in the NFL, and he's nervous about joining a ministry that makes blankets and hats for hospitalized children. And he said, I was curious, so I asked him, how did you learn how to crochet? And he said, I was in the Hells Angels for 12 years, and I went to prison, and it was in prison that I learned how to crochet. And now that I got out, it's the one thing that I can do for the Lord. And I'm like, that's the coolest story ever. But when I read stuff like that, I'm like, he can change anyone. Anyone. Like, if you don't like your husband right now, he can change him, okay? If he doesn't like you right now, he can change you, okay? I mean, that works two ways there, okay? But it's kind of like when I see these things, I read, when I first, in high school, I read Nikki Cruz's Run, Baby, Run. I'm sure most of you have read it. If not, go get it and read it. It's like the coolest book ever. He's a street gang member, young kid, probably, he wouldn't live to be 16 the rate he was going. Parents into witchcraft, and a street preacher comes along and has a little revival. Nikki Cruz gets saved, changes his entire life, and he becomes an evangelist, I mean, up until even today, I think. So, but when I see this, I think, God, you're the God of change. You can change anyone and do anything. And that excites me because that's one more piece of getting to know Jesus who is in my life. We see him, marriages restored. Like if you're here and you're like, my marriage is driving me crazy right now, please know that God can restore it. Do not walk away from it. Get help. Because God doesn't want, he wants it to be restored. He loves you, but he needs you to figure out what you need to, what do you need to do? Okay, I always say that. What do you need to do? People will come to me all the time. My husband, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I would say, great. Your husband's probably going, my wife, blah, 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 blah. So it works two ways. And now it's a matter of saying, God, what do you want to change in me? Okay? I was laughing the other day because Rob, we have a business. So he walked by and he said something about the business. And I said, oh, I think you should. And so I'd give him my advice, which of course he didn't ask for. And bless his heart, he looked at me and he said, you tell me that all the time. And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't ever tell you those things. And he's like, no, you really do. So now when he walks by, I do this. Like it wants to come out, but I'm trying really hard to keep it in there, okay? But I know I drive him nuts, okay? And there's days when he drives me nuts. That's just marriage. So now what I'm learning is that instead of saying, God, I need you to change him, he's driving me crazy, okay? You can pray that. But most overarching beyond that is, God, will you change me? God, I need you to come in and change me, whatever, because he's annoying me, I'm annoying him, but let's start with me first, okay? If you work with me, then I'm pretty sure that will work itself out, but change me first. So I'm learning to do that. I realized this yesterday. I have a guy that works with the ministry part of this whole thing, and I'm pretty much certain that he hates me, and I'm pretty certain I hate him, okay? Which is not a good thing to do here, okay? But what I realized in life, this is not even in my notes. I thought about it this morning. But Cheyenne walked through yesterday as I had gotten an email from this guy about something that we're trying to do, and every time he sends me something, I'm frustrated. And I'm just like, oh, I can't stand this guy. He drives me nuts. And so Cheyenne walks by and she goes, what are you frustrated about? I go, oh, this guy, we just can't seem to get along. And she goes, Mom, you can't even understand his tone from an email. And I'm like, trust me, I get his tone, even if it's an email. And so I looked at Rob and I said, what is my problem with him? I said, I have a song for him. It's the Barney song. I hate you, you hate me. Okay, I made it up myself. I switched the whole thing. I said, we're never going to be a family because you totally make me nuts. But what I realized is that I told Rob, I said, Rob, the problem is me. Like, I'm sure it's him. But I said, I want to get to the point where it's about me. It's like God saying, God, something's going on in his life. I need to pray for him. I don't know what's going on. I don't know his family situation. I don't know his work situation. I don't know what's going on, but I want to pray for him. And when I start doing that, it changes my thinking. When I get an email from him, it's not you, David, by the way. I love you, David. Poor David's like thinking, I'm the only man in her ministry besides her husband. But I lost my train of thought on that one. What was I saying? I can't remember. Praying for him. Okay, yeah, so I realized that I have to start praying for him and praying and then it takes the focus off of me. My feelings are hurt. Poor me. Everything's about me. Me. And now what that does is take it and say, God, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be all about him. And now I'm going to pray for him. And if his email to me is kind of fussy, I'm probably doing something. So would you just, make him patient with me and whatever the issue is. So we have to move from being all about me to all about somebody else. So that's what I learned this week. If you think like you're here and you're like, Jesus has changed my life and now I'm perfect. Okay, trust me. That never happens, okay? We're not perfect. Every day it's something new. And I'm like, serious? Like now we have to deal with my selfishness. I like to be selfish, okay? I like it being all about me, but it's not. Okay, none of that I don't think was really what I was supposed to talk about today. So here's my thought about my whole Peter thing, okay, on who is Jesus. What I came to the conclusion is that your answer and my answer to that will determine, this is the most important thing today, it's going to determine what you do with your life here on earth and where you're going to spend eternity. Okay, so how you come out on who Jesus is going to affect what happens with you now and what happens with you in eternity. Because if he's just some religious leader, then it doesn't matter at all. But if his claims are true, then that means everything in the Bible is true. And that means that when I follow him, everything's going to change. You can't just be, I am just a Christian and nothing changes. I don't believe that can happen in someone's life. So I think about Peter, and I think he's living this perfectly happy life. He's got his family business. He's got his wife. He lives on the water, which is kind of a cool deal. But then when he came to the realization of who Jesus was and he decides to follow him, it's like the fishing business wasn't that important anymore, because now his mission was completely different, and it was to spread the gospel and make Jesus known to every person. And that's kind of what our job is going to be. Now, I'm hoping today is a really good reminder on why it's important for us to read the Bible. Because for Peter and the disciples, they could just hang out with Jesus. They could get to know him that way. But for us, 2,000 years later, the only way we can get to know Jesus is to actually read our Bible. That's how we get to know him. So this is a really important key to living life on this earth, and the key to where we're going to spend eternity. So open the Bible, read it, and get to know Jesus. Have a really good week.